How does a digital ecosystem develop? Dr. Joseph Attick, the executive chairman of ID4Africa, can tell you. I'm Joel McConvey. Today's Biometric Update podcast takes us to Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire, where Biometric Update managing editor Chris Burt had a chance to sit down with Dr. Attick and talk about how Africa is leading the world in digital identity. Here's their conversation in part one of our coverage of the ID4Africa 2026 AGM in Abidjan and the shift happening in Africa's identity sector.
My first question I wanted to ask you is about the ecosystem that you were discussing on the first day, and is the shift to the ecosystem now underway? Is it on, or is it just beginning?
I'm actually very, very pleased to see that the concept of the ecosystem took off like a wildfire. In fact, if we looked at the majority of speakers that spoke in the lineup in the program, many of them emphasized that the right mindset, the right framework for us to discuss was the ecosystem. And it's not a terminology. I mean, really, like I said in my opening, this is not a terminology. This reflects the reality on the ground. And many of these countries have made significant progress because they have opened up to the ecosystem. The silos are starting to fall. And I was thinking about this very point yesterday on the playbooks, but since 3 days I've been on stage, and while I know of the developments that the African countries have been doing, because I put them on the program and I interviewed them and curated the program, what was so satisfying is to see the outcomes of the things that they have done. We've gone from the days of primitive to the days when you are leading the thought process in digital identity in difficult context. It's so satisfying to see that. I just said to myself, this is not a movement anymore. This is a revolution. We're living it. Mm-hmm. You could see the intensity of people. You could see their engagement. You can see their convictions. You can see that they are bringing with them the political leadership of their countries, and they are making a difference. Things are happening. I mean, the enrollment numbers speak for themselves, but also the use cases are coming through, and people are realizing the importance of identity. The dialogue is shifting. Absolutely. The best place to frame where we are is the opening speech that I did, and that gave me satisfaction because it felt we were not talking across each other. I defined what was going to happen over the next 3 days. And it wasn't just hindsight. It wasn't hindsight. It was based on the fact that we spent the last year curating, researching, interviewing, talking. So we ended up characterizing the ecosystem very accurately. Mm-hmm. And they came in with their roles and delivered exactly. There was no false note here. There was no false note. Everybody basically reflected their contribution to our body of knowledge, which is that the ecosystem is now here and it's here to stay, and it is the way we're going forward. Even the development agencies have started to use DPE, Digital Public Ecosystem, instead of DPI, which, too much technically driven concepts or an approach that prioritizes technology over people, over stakeholders, is bound to fail. And that's why the ecosystem, my hope is that it's not that Africa needs to embrace, Africa has embraced. My hope is that the development community, the worldwide community, does not put obstacles and counters this agenda by pushing for other sort of concepts because they need to maintain the uniqueness, they need to maintain. Sometimes I feel we need to be fashionable. And that's the wrong mentality. We don't need new things all the time. We need to build on things that are happening, that are working, that are delivering. But sometimes, organizations that fund, they can say, well, but we funded this last year. What is new here? It feels like almost programming on network television. Like, let's get something new to fund. That's not what Africa needs. Africa needs continuity, it needs sustainability, it needs consistency across the board. And for that, I think the ecosystem is where we all need to buy in. And so I'm hoping that everyone from the worldwide community will join us. I came from math. I'm a mathematician. In my old days, my career was math. And I've always appreciated the concept that richness does not require complexity. Richness can be built on the iteration of simple principles, but iterated many times. That's how ecosystems work. If you had to design centrally every movement of an organism and the dependence, and you had to say, well, we don't have enough of these worms, we don't have enough of these birds, we don't have enough of these organisms. If we had to kind of order them and try to interfere with them, this is what happened in centralized economies in the Soviet Union in the old days. Mm-hmm. You built centralized economies and not ecosystems, and they failed. And that's what I'm seeing here. But the problem the challenge with where we are is institutional arrangements, and governance. Now, if I say institutional arrangement, means who governs what and how do we collectively govern this ecosystem. I have not stopped meeting delegations who came to me and said, you're absolutely right, but we do have conflict about who governs. Co-governance is not understood yet. And in fact, many institutions, not just in Africa, around the world, have not yet understood the co-governance. And I could name very specific organizations, Pan-African or regional or whatever, that they are very much struggling with that concept. Because if you have the wrong governance, you could end up doing nothing. Why? Because the stakeholders are worried that they will step on each other's toes, or they are worried that they are not getting their fair share of the voice and the assets, etc., in this system. So what happens is doing nothing sometimes is the safest thing to do. But that is exactly the wrong reaction. I see several countries where doing nothing, it's a state of paralysis, a state of being stuck in that. And they're asking for external sort of unbiased parties like ID4Africa. They're coming to us and saying, help us resolve this issue and come up with a governance framework. So I think this is exactly the healthiest conversation to have. Because we went from, do I do biometrics or do I duplicate with this or that, to saying, how can people, stakeholders, work together legitimately to advance collectively? The last thing you want to do is have a committee work. That's not how ecosystem governance works. It is not democratic. It is not, let's vote. We don't do that. What happens is you need to define roles and responsibilities. You need to define lines of accountability, and you need to define the interaction models. The best way to think about ecosystems and ecosystem governance is potluck. It's basically everyone brings in a dish to contribute and share. You're responsible to bring in that dish. You're responsible to cook. You're responsible to do something. We count on, of course, we coordinate. You call the organizer, you say, the coordinator. You say, is somebody bringing a potato salad? Right. No, bring potato salad. Somebody bringing fruit. I'll handle the drinks. I'll handle that. So that coordinator role is very important, but it is a coordinator role. It is not the dictator that says this. If the ecosystem is rich enough, you have diversity, and then if the coordination role is very strong, then you can have total coverage. So this is where we are in Africa. This is the potluck of stakeholders, and it's fantastic to see it. It's a pleasure to see Africa reaching this point in the maturity of the dialogue. In the room, in the plenary room, I had in the audience representatives of very advanced economies. Europe was in the room, Latin America was in the room, India was in the room, and all of them consistently said the maturity of the dialogue on stage was so advanced, even for advanced economies, we have not reached that kind of dialogue. They was like, we were absolutely blown away by how sophisticated the dialogue has become in Africa. And I said, that's a reflection of the fact that Africa has made progress. We are no longer talking about the invisibles. I mean, we're talking about sustaining the digital state.
I wonder if there are any particular examples that stand out to you, because those institutional arrangements are, of course, challenging for everyone, and I'm sure various countries are at different points. Are there any really good examples that you can point to say, it seems to be going in the right direction here, and that those countries that are further behind can look to?
Yes, I mean, clearly, just like with all ecosystems, there isn't a single one-size-fits-all, because depending on the nature of the ecosystem, even if we think about, for example, if you do any gardening, you know very well, depending on what is participating in it, the ecosystem takes a different form and it takes a different set of ingredients to stimulate it and make it successful. With that in mind, I would say the 10 countries that I have highlighted on day one, so these were selected precisely because more or less each one had some new ingredient or a successful ingredient that we can point to. The Ethiopias of the world, Nigeria, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, D'Ivoire. So there are 10 countries. Benin even has come strong in terms of their ecosystem. They are at different stages. The most advanced one in the ecosystem is Ethiopia, and because they didn't have legacy,
Right.
They came in without any legacy, and so it's, I would say, ecosystem from the start, or ecosystem by design. They came at it with that mentality in mind. We've been accompanying Ethiopia since 2017. But it was mostly building capacity, etc. But then they really understood that being a latecomer sometimes is an advantage because you don't have the baggage. Other ones, like Kenya and Tanzania, are very mature. But what I like about them, for example, Tanzania, is that they are mature, but they're acting as a startup, which is the right way to think about it. But despite the fact that they are mature, they have managed to maintain a startup mentality by being nimble, by being collaborative, So that's what these countries need to do, is they need to have the mandates, even if they are mature, to act as startups. Nigeria is the same way. I mean, they figured this out. And I think the power of identity is now convincing the hierarchies, the leaderships, everybody. They're realizing that you cannot survive as a country without a performing digital identity ecosystem. It's like saying the country doesn't need electricity. I mean, that power is needed. And so you have countries that are now in a panic mode. I mean, I could say there is the 10 that I showed you, and you have it in the program, so you know who was there. Mm-hmm. These are the cream of the crop. There is a second layer, which are kind of developing, advancing, etc. But then, yes, unfortunately, there are some countries that have been left behind. And they're not been left behind because they lack financial resources. left behind because the political will, for one reason or another, has not yet bought into it. And that's why they are soliciting ID4Africa as a body to sensitize, as a body of credibility to sensitize their leadership. There's no more time to waste. There's no more time to say we're going to have 5 years to build capacity. That train has moved. And so
2030 will be come and gone.
2030 will be come and gone, but worse than that, their economies are suffering.
Right.
Their people are saying, you know, when you have the youth that is not finding jobs in your country, you know where they're going to be. They're going to be on the Mediterranean in rafts, crossing and taking risks and leaving the country. That's exactly the wrong trend that we need to watch out for. I agree with the World Bank. Actually, the priority, you might think that, identity is about making invisible visible. But in fact, there is an underlying issue, which is employment. If 1 billion people are going to be unemployed, this is a catastrophic situation. And you might think, what's the link? Well, the link is if economic opportunities are not being promoted by the right ecosystem, the right economic policies in the country, and one pillar of that is the digital identity, then you are going to have a major unemployment problem in the youth. This is the asset of this continent. The youthful people, instead of putting their energy into building and sustaining the country's economic richness and economic health, they're going to lead the revolt. I mean, we've seen that in the West African region. We've seen the youth lead the transition. It's all about economics. At the end of the day, throughout the history, we've seen when people don't have economic opportunity, they don't have food to eat, revolutions start. If anything we learned from the French Revolution, it is that. You can't tell them, eat biscuits. I mean, at the end of the day, we need real opportunities. I've never seen as much hunger for self-realization. Give me my chance to realize my potential. Don't put obstacles in front of me. And this is why the hackathon is so near and dear to my heart, is because this is what comes next. I mean, people say, what comes next? I point out to them, I say, they are the future of this continent. So for us, even though it's the Sustainable Development Goal 16.9 has sustained us through that, the link between identity and economic development has now become so much clear that it is about jobs, it is about economic opportunities. A country that does not have digital identity will have economic problems. And that message is resonating with the leadership because they don't care about identity. They care about crowds in the streets, bringing down the regimes and saying, you're not giving us opportunities. So I said the revolution, but I said it in a pacifist way, in the sense it's better to go through a pacifist revolution than to have a violent revolt, which I think, let's embrace that identity revolution and let's make sure we understand what is underlying it. Underlying it is economic opportunities for everyone. So we're going to move away from the slogan identity for all to economic opportunities for all, because that's what fundamentally resonates with the continent.
Hi, I'm back. You heard Dr. Attick mention the ID4Africa hackathon. This year, the winner was Trust Seal, a team from Senegal. Chris Burt spoke briefly with Papa Tahibu, a spokesperson for the student team from the Polytechnic School of Thiès.
Okay, so Chris Burt here at ID4Africa's 2026 AGM with the winning team from Senegal of the ID4Africa 2026 hackathon. So first of all, congratulations to you. And my first question is, what do you intend to do with Trust Seal going forward?
Okay, so right now we validated the foundation phase, so we will do validation and the scaling phase at the end of 2026.
Very good. So, and then any plans for 2027?
Yes, we would like to have partnership with Mozip and the others infrastructure.
So you have a whole vision
Yes.
laid out. Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. And one more question: what are you going to take away from this experience? Maybe something that you've learned, or something that you know, a feeling that you get from it. Just anything that you will benefit from this experience.
Yes, I think the most valuable benefit is about the people we meet. So we meet valuable people, and we've met the ideas, the ideas people. So they are very interested by our solution, and they say that they will help you so finish our solution. So we've met also our government, Senegal government, and they say that they will help us. So start in Senegal.
Fantastic. So this is just the beginning,
Yes.
really, for Trust.
Yes.
Many thanks to Dr. Joseph Attick for his time in Abidjan. Thanks to Chris Burt for making the trip. And thanks to you for listening. Be sure to check in next week for part 2 of our ID4Africa 2026 coverage at www.biometricupdate.com.